for Volume 2 of our PowerPoint design class here. And we're right where we left off with the taxonomy title slide that we did. You can see here, slide 2, we still have the law of thirds slide for reference. Today I want to finish up this slide a little bit with some cool tricks I think that you'll like, and also do a table of contents slide, and maybe even think about creating some slides that represent different sections. I don't know. I'm trying to remember my biology days, ninth grade and seventh grade. So that was, that was like 30 something years ago. But I do remember there being kingdoms in nature. I remember at the time bacteria were in one. I think it was called Monera. I don't know if that's still the case. Certainly there were protists, most argumentative of the organisms. And there were animals and plants. I think something like that. Animals and plants, maybe. But we're going to sort of figure that out together and create a table of contents. Maybe we'll attack one of the kingdoms aesthetically, and so we can see how different colors and themes can kind of help separate our PowerPoint presentation to make it make sense to students. I mentioned in the last PowerPoint that I would probably duck over to the PowerPoint that we did for the Monday faculty meeting on March the 23rd, our day back from COVID mania. And that presentation also has color-coded sections with sort of graphic assets to sort of indicate theme. So that might be a pit stop either this episode or next. Let's just go ahead and get started, and I'm just going to keep going until I fall asleep on a keyboard. So if you hear a weird sound, you know what happened, because it's late at the Shaw household. Okie dokie. So I really like where we ended up here before. One quick trick I want to show you is with, again, my favorite little guy here, the elephant. One of the beauties of doing this sort of erasure of the background, deleting the background, is that PowerPoint recognizes the edge of this image, the edge of this elephant in this particular case. You're thinking, okay, that's cool. It is cool because it exposes this blue rectangle in a way that looks like it's floating behind the elephant. But it also gives us another cool possibility, and that's a drop shadow. So if you go to the picture format section, actually you don't have to. It's on the right pane here. You have different features for formatting the picture if the picture is selected. I'm sorry, that's the answer there. I like a subtle drop shadow from time to time. The way PowerPoint works is that it has preset shadows. So when you drop down here where it says presets, you'll find right now there's no shadow, but there are shadows sort of indicated by these little icons as to where those shadows fall. Now, here's the simple answer as to how you decide where the shadow offset is. You look at the lighting source on the object that you're going to put a shadow on, in this case this elephant, and it looks like light is shining onto it from above. I'm assuming this was photographed outside. I'm assuming it was photographed during the middle of the day and the sun was beating down on the back of this elephant on the hot Serengeti, and so that casts a shadow underneath, and that's why you'll notice his belly is in shade, a part of its leg, and so on, and then underneath here where its tusk comes out, and I guess his mouth, I'm not sure if that's his mouth, and then underneath the ear here. I'm sure it's his mouth, but there might be a more scientific name. I don't know. Where's Miss Todd when you need her? Raising goats, obviously. So let's go ahead and do a bottom offset here. When I do this, you'll see what I mean. This should look natural. Okay, that's pretty cool. It's subtle. I like that it's subtle. I certainly don't want it to be a harsh, very harsh shadow. If I remove the blur, you'll see that this shadow becomes harsh. If I decrease the transparency of the shadow, it becomes very harsh. And the only thing that can make it worse is if I increase this distance and you see this just black blob behind the elephant. It ruins the effect we were going for. So first rule is shadows are almost never opaque. And so let's go ahead and increase the transparency. I'm going to let it sit at around 70 for the sake of this example. Also, typically when something's standing away from something, it casts a softer shadow than when it's very close. So to indicate some distance, I'm going to blur that shadow just a tiny bit. Just a teeny tiny bit. Also, you notice that there's a tusk shadow here. That's our point of reference when we're looking at the shadow. Otherwise, we can't really tell the viewer can't tell what we're trying to do. We know what we're trying to do. So I'm going to decrease the distance until I'm happy with where that tusk shadow sits. That's our point of reference, and I kind of like it where it is now. It kind of looks like that elephant is standing in front of that blue rectangle in a very natural way. Let's see. I think we could stand to decrease transparency just a touch more. And now we've created a look that is pretty neat. It's certainly better than not having it. And of course, there's one way to demonstrate that, and that is by removing it really quickly and then putting it back on. So let's go ahead and remove it, and you'll see it's not as fun anymore, is it? You miss it. You do. You miss the shadow. You miss the drop shadow. No problem. We'll drop that puppy right back in, and then we'll figure out what we had done before to make it sit where you wanted. And by you, I mean me. Let's blur it up a little bit more. I think we had a blur set to about 6, and let's go ahead and increase the distance a touch more, and we're going to increase the size a little bit. Perfect. And I think we can get away with a little less there. Cool. We're back to approximately where we want. Again, this is a subtle thing, but you can typically tell when you're in the right neighborhood, and I think we are. So again, drop shadows, lots of fun, really subtle. Don't do them in a way that's tacky or super obvious. We always like to do them in a way that's subtle and makes things look like they're creating some sense of distance. This brings up another point, which is that presentations are an opportunity to create depth. That's D-E-P-T-H. I know when I try to say that clearly, and it always comes up sounding like I'm saying deaf, which child of the 90s, I guess. But depth is what I'm trying to create, and this kind of helps me create that. Certainly the elephant is in the very foreground. Then the light blue rectangle. Then this bacterial background. Okay? So creating that layer of foreground, middle ground, background gives you some graphic opportunities moving forward. Speaking of moving forward, let's do that. And I want to show you a way that we use the very graphic title slide moving into a table of contents slide, which I think, especially for online courses, distance learning courses, very important. to have presentations that are highly structured and easy to scroll through later. Uh, the reason why, when you watched the presentation that Mr. DeLeon gave you on Monday, the reason why, in part, there's a sort of graphic theme to each section of the presentation, and there is a table of contents at the beginning, is that if you look at the table of contents quickly, you can thumb through the whole hour-long video easily and find the part of the presentation you're looking for. That's good. That's a useful thing for you to do for your participants. And as such, in the name of customer service, we should do the same thing here. So I'll show you how to do that right now. First thing I'm going to do, though, before we move on, is my idea for the next slide is to move all this bacterial stuff over to the left. And even move our little guy and his little buddy, the blue rectangle, over to the left as well, in order to create a more pronounced black space, in order to place white text on top of it. And we're going to use the same font here. Again, this is the Avenir Next font, I believe, condensed. So that's very sciencey. First thing I want to do in order to make that transition happen is make the slide upon which all this beauty sits black. That'll make sense in just a second, but how you do that is by going to your design tab right up here and going to format background. When you click that format background button, you're going to get this window pane here on the right. Under color, go ahead and choose black. I think it might have already defaulted to that for some reason. It was white before. Next, we're going to right-click on our slide here, slide 1, and duplicate slide. Pretty cool. Not only are we going to show you how to do this table of contents today, we'll show you how to use a really fun transition. I'm not a big fan of transitions and animations in PowerPoint, but there is one that I do like, and we're going to get to it in a second. And I'm not going to tell you what it is right now. I'm going to make you wait. Don't hold your breath, though. That's going to take some time. I don't want you to have any respiratory problems. So let's see. First things first, let's move everything over to the left like I promised. How do I do that? Okay, so I've got my trusty finger on the shift button. I said shift with an F in it. And I'm going to click all the things I want to move. Well, that's the ombre shadow rectangle. I'm holding the shift button. That's also the picture of the bacteria in the background, which is now selected. That's also this blue rectangle. And of course, my favorite, elephant. I've got them all together now. What you can do is you can click and move them all together. The problem with that is it's kind of hard to make sure you get true lateral movement because with your finger or with your mouse, you're going to get an up and down movement. So I'm going to undo those moves, and I'm going to suggest the far more precise use of the left arrow button. You cannot see that right now, but you will. You can't see my finger touching the left arrow button, but it is now. And so now I've started moving it with my left arrow button, and it's going to take a little bit more time, but it's in line, and that's really important for this transition and this graphic idea to work. So as I move this over to the left, I'm also at the same time looking at this slide number 2. When I let go of this button, this preview of the slide will update. You see how things moved over? I need more. I need more black space for this table of contents. So and I want the change to be pronounced it's very important for the transition that comes next. So, you know, this is a good time to take a coffee break or something. We're almost there. Look, elephants not known for their speed, people. Neither are bacteria. Anyway, so here we are. We're getting closer and closer to the end goal here. When I let go now, you'll see we've come a good ways. And I'm going to stop. I'm a perfectionist. I'm sorry. You should be too when it comes to this kind of stuff. All right. There we go. I'm going to leave it at that just for the sake of this demonstration. I might have even done a little bit more if this work were for me and not for the sake of demonstration. So there, I said it. Now I'm going to unselect all that stuff. You can see that there's a difference in the slide when I bring it up to slide view. You could see that there's a lot more black here than here, right? Pretty pronounced difference. Fastest elephant in town. Okay, so I'm going to exit back out, back to design view and out of the slide view. Now, next thing I want to do is I want to address this text. So typically with a table of contents, it's going to be left justified instead of right justified like I've done here. And that's what we're going to do. But we're also going to do a couple of other things. First things first, taxonomy doesn't have to be as huge as it was on the first slide. So we're going to drop down. I'll move to the Home tab. We're going to drop down the size. We're going to go to 60 and see what it looks like. We're going to get even a little smaller than 60. I'm thinking maybe 54 is good. You know what? 44. I'm feeling crazy. And we're going to go ahead and left justify this guy right now. Bam. Now, we've got the classification of organisms text. We don't need it to say that anymore. We're going to just put some text that sounds biological, and then I'll get angry emails from biology teachers, which would be a first because they're so sweet. No, they are. So let me go ahead and move that over to the left, and I'm going to go to retype it, but instead of it being at 40, which is so close to what the title is, I'm going to drop down to maybe 32. Okay. And now I'm going to put Roman numeral 1, Monera, which may very well be an out-of-date kingdom. As soon as I press enter, PowerPoint detects that I'm doing bullets because it's so smart, and I am. So I'm going to let it. I'm going to put in Protista. What else is there? Plantae. Animalia. These are 4 that I remember. I know there's others, and if you want, you can put them in the comments, but I'm not going to really read them. Those comments. Comments about the design, yes. Comments about the content. So now let's take a look at how this looks in slide view. I don't like it sitting right on top of the elephant, right? Since we moved the elephant and we didn't really do much with the text except left justify it, it doesn't sit in the right spot. Let's go ahead and move this text to where it sort of belongs, which is on the right third. Good answer. I can kind of tell that I'm on the right third because I can line it up here. Remember when I made that little handy dandy slide for us? So now when I look at it, much better, much better. So the question is, what next? Mr. Shaw, what next? Good question. Let's escape. Remember I told you about that transition that I really liked and I wouldn't tell you what it is? I'm about to tell you. I think you're going to like it. Um, if you go to transitions, right now it's set to none. Right next to it, there's one called morph. It's the only transition that I'll even mess with in this program, except for fades and the occasional wipe. I don't like any of the other ones; they look really cheesy. But the peel off can be good if you have like a text that looks like a piece of paper, and you're turning a page. But that's not the case here. So I click morph. Next, I go to effect options. Instead of clicking objects, I'm going to click words. Smooth move there, Mr. Shaw. Did you see that? Of course you didn't, because the duration wasn't long enough. So we're going to make that duration pop up to a smooth 5 seconds. And now we're going to take a look at it in slide view. That was the computer, not my mouth. All right, look at how smooth that is. Easy to do, adds an air of professionalism to your PowerPoint. Is not tacky, smooth, subtle. All of the things that I like to see in a presentation. The only thing that's bothering me about this presentation right now is that I feel like maybe I didn't move our graphic assets over to the left enough. But beyond that, I'm pretty happy with how it's looking. Next stop is going to be looking at how we're going to make the different sections of this presentation look graphically connected, but different. In this particular case, kingdom to kingdom, right? So how is Monera going to look different than Partista different than Plantai, and so on. So we're going to tackle that likely here in episode 3. But before I let you go for tonight, I'm going to zip over to that presentation that we did for Monday. So let me go ahead and escape, and I'm going to do a quick switcheroo here. And this is the March 23rd faculty meeting. Excuse me. That is a cough related to being parched and nothing else. And I promised that was ice cold water and nothing else. So here we are. This is the presentation that you saw on Monday. Okay, so let's take a look at what we did here. First thing was, in this particular presentation, I really wanted to have a card that, I'm going to go ahead and bring it up as in slideshow mode, slide mode. I really wanted to have a card that indicated what the norms were going to be for the morning. And this has to do with the fact that we were trying new software out. There are some serious issues with the software, and as much as anybody could have taken control of the slideshow, and anybody could have not only taken control of the slideshow, but also, as they're sitting there, thumb through all the slides and sort of get to the end before Mr. De Leon had made it to slide 2. Beyond that, anybody could also sort of chime in with their microphone. And with as many folks as we had in on that meeting, we topped out at 122 people. Microphones would have made the meeting an untenable proposition. We really needed it to not be the case. It wasn't anything other than that. It was not any sort of draconian or fascist thing. It was simply practical for it to not be the case. The chat feature also did actually end up working really well, and I'm happy with how everything went on Monday. Graphically, though, I wanted to have something that looked kind of like the presentation, but not quite as colorful, so that when we went into the presentation, there was something different. But of course, familiar. So I'm using Sharpstown green and gold underneath a sort of muted version of the Apollo logo, which caused zero controversy when I drew it. None. I don't remember anybody being upset about it at all. Anyway, when I click again, you'll see I stick to this sort of almost looks like a taupe or beige color. Easier on the eye than bright white. Given the nature of what we were going to be discussing in this presentation, I thought that it emoted the right way. Something more severe would have felt more severe. And the last thing I wanted to do was to create additional fear or concern or anxiety in those watching, namely you. So that's why I chose this color palette. Now, when we transitioned, we went to a district expectations slide. Again, I kept the same taupe color for the text, but you'll notice on the left, this is where I use graphics in color to sort of separate the presentation into sections. So again, this is a table of contents, just sort of like what we have on our taxonomy presentation that we're still building together. District expectations are bold here. Accountability is bold here. Virtual Sharpstown is bold here. Virtual classrooms is bold here. Wraparound resources, I only made wraparound bold because bolding both of them would look weird. And it is the essential word here, but you'll notice later that I used both words. And then the week schedule, same reason. But basically, I'm bold facing the most important words and also creating some graphic interest where there wouldn't be any had I not done that. And we can look at that here in a second too. I'm going to go ahead and escape and we'll take a look at, I wasn't looking to escape to Elephant Land. I don't know what happened there. Here we go. Back to where we were. Apologies. So if you look here on the left, all of the district expectations have the HISD full color seal, which I stole directly from their style guide. The same essential blue as you see the HISD blue. The mustard yellow is essentially the same as what we have in the Sharpstown yellow, but it is a yellow that is used in some HISD publications. All of this is supposed to be remotely reminiscent of HISD material. I use a nice friendly pea green and taupe to get the job done. Plenty of contrast for phones, tablets, and PCs, but not so severe that it's just burning holes in your eyes while you're watching it, and that was what I was going for. Again, as you go through the slides, you'll notice graphically, I'm bold-facing certain words that I find to be the most important words, and creating visual interest by breaking up the monotony of the same font, all the way through. So this will certainly be for core subject areas as opposed to other subjects. Okay, well that dichotomy is the point of the slide, so it makes sense. Yeah, I said dichotomy. Microsoft Teams, I changed the logo here. Other than that, it's all the same style. When I switch to Hub, same thing. Hub logo here, but everything is the same. So when I go to the digital workflow, I'm pulling those same graphic assets in to kind of create that workflow. Simple. Deceptively simple. So here, very little here that I need to boldface except for the word all. And then here's a nice little graphic touch. I used these icons from the respective vendors that are that have been approached to help our kids, and I put a little reflection underneath each. Let me show you how I did that. So I'm going to go ahead and focus on the Imagine Learning logo. I want to go to picture format. Click here. where did I go? Picture effects. And under reflection, you'll see I chose a reflection. You'll notice that the level of reflection increases as you go from left to right here. And the reflections themselves have an offset as you go from left to right. What does that mean? The distance between the image and the illusion or imaginary floor. So, for example, there isn't any offset here. If I go here, you'll notice that I've increased the offset. So you see that there's distance between the image and the reflection, where you don't see that elsewhere. Just because I can't take that. It's like washing one hand without washing the other. I'm going to go ahead and undo it. But you see what that was all about. So the reflection kind of created some visual interest, and the idea was to sort of create some depth just to keep it a little interesting. I didn't want to go overboard on graphics on this one. I really wanted Mr. De Leon's speech to be the main character. However, I also wanted you to have some visual assets that you can use to help thumb through the video and the presentation easily. So we go through 19 slides with district expectations. When we get to the 20th slide and we move to the state accountability, I've changed colors, right? I go to a blue. I'm keeping the taupe here with the text, but a nice charcoal color and a Texas state of Texas map, sort of a logo here. You'll notice a little drop shadow. I bet you didn't even see it when you watched the presentation. Just enough to create some distance from this little bit of charcoal here. Of course, you want to know what it would look like without it. I know. I can read your minds. Here it is without a drop shadow. It just doesn't feel the same. I miss it, and because I miss it, I'm gonna put it back in, and you can't stop me. It feels so much better. And so here we are with accountability again. Text with bold-faced parts that are most important. When we switch back to Sharpstown, voila, we've established a theme. The theme is all our own. All these aspects can be moved around, as you can see, and I'll undo that so you can see how that assembles. There is a text box with the word Virtual Sharpstown there. There are two rectangles, one on top of the other. The one on top has a gradient in it. I'll show you how that works. So a gradient is that same ombre thing that we're talking about. When I go to Shape Fill, you'll see the word gradient. You can drop down and it'll give you gradient options. And I'm going to tell you, I was lazy. I kind of had the mustard color chosen. I'm going to go ahead and I'll choose a different color for the sake of this. I'm going to choose a really bright lime yellow, which I would never use in this presentation. When I go to gradient, what you'll notice is that it's taken that lime yellow and given me previews of gradients that I might want to use. And I essentially used this setting. Now, why wouldn't I use this chartreuse color for the presentation that we were doing on Monday? Well, again, I do not want to burn anybody's eyeballs out. And I did not want the presentation to be the main character. And not enough contrast, right? I really want people to be able to read this easily. If you're looking at this on your phone because you got the Microsoft Teams app on your phone and you left your computer at school, which is a real possibility for a lot of the folks that were watching, I didn't want you to have to put the phone up to your nose to be able to read what was going on there. I wanted you to be able to read it easily. So this text is extra large for that purpose, for the purpose of everybody watching, not just the folks that are watching it on the larger screen of their computer. Again, I'm gonna go ahead and undo that chartreuse because um, gross, and I'm gonna put it back the way it was so that we can um, feel better about the world. There, virtual Sharpstown. And then when we switch between virtual Sharpstown, I want to keep to virtual classrooms. I want to keep the Sharpstown theme, so you see the difference. But I switch background colors, and I chose a color that felt like it was in the same sort of color family. It's sort of a, I'll say it and you'll laugh, autumnal color family. It was a family of colors that look like they're from the autumn season, uh, just because there's some comfort there. And that was what I was trying to create visually because that's what we wanted to create actually. And I hope that we did. And, in a time like this, it really is something that we aspire to do and we try our best to do because we know that there's so many things going on. And so many people's lives are upended and turned over and upside down and topsy turvy right now. Every little thing matters, and so we took it seriously. Here's a slide where we put a table in, and we kind of use the same green from the stripe here, the same brown from the background, the same taupe from the text, and there's some unity and uniformity. I left the days of the week in white because I wanted them to stick out a little bit, but they're smaller font, so it doesn't, again, burn your eyeballs out. I switch back to the district when we do wraparound resources because that's where that comes from. Switch back to us when we go to this week's schedule. And then when we switch to our note to you, which we love the most, still get a little bit emotional when I see this. I thought it'd be fun to put some hearts in because, well, it's like the perfect thing. So that's why I did it this way. That basic organization is actually modeling the kind of organization I'm going to be designing with you. I'm going to be designing with you here. So next time when we tune in, we're going to look at some different design ideas for Monera, Protista, Plantae, Animalia, and maybe, just maybe, I will go read what these words mean in the biology world before I show up to do a presentation. Until then, I wish all of you a productive and creative and loving and kind next few days. I know that there was some mix-up on Microsoft Teams rostering, and some of you created those rosters, and now Sebastian is going to be doing the rostering, and I know that might have been a little bit under-communicated or seemingly under-communicated. Guys, we're communicating as quickly as we can. Things keep changing. But the best that we can do is be flexible and be forgiving because everything is topsy-turvy except for the direction of our spirits and our hearts, which is always in the direction of progress, comfort, and education for our students and their families, and frankly, for you all as well. We love you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in. There's more to come. I appreciate everybody who has reached out to me with comments from the first one. I look forward to more for this one, and do some drop shadows, try some morphing, and think about how you're going to organize those presentations for those kids. The Apollos when we get them back. And until then, I bid you all adieu. See you soon. Bye-bye.